President Muhammadu Buhari has announced the extension of the validity of the old 200 Naira notes till April 10. Announcing the development in a televised nationwide address today, the president said all existing old 1,000 Naira notes and 500 Naira notes remain redeemable at the Central Bank of Nigeria on designated points. Let's take a look at the President Buhari's address this morning.
I'm addressing you as your democratically elected president to identify with you and express my sympathy over the difficulties being experienced as we continue the implementation of new monetary policies aimed at boosting our economy and tightening of the loopholes associated with money laundering. Let me reassure Nigerians that strengthening our economy, enhancing security, and blockage of leakages associated with illicit financial flows remain top priority of our administration. And I shall remain committed to my oath of protecting and advancing the interests of Nigerians and the nation at all times. In the last quarter of 2022, I authorized the Central Bank of Nigeria to redesign the 200 Naira, 500 Naira, and 1,000 Naira Nigerian banknotes. For a smooth transition, I similarly approved that the redesigned banknotes should circulate concurrently with the old banknotes till 31st January 2023, before the old notes cease to be legal tender. In appreciation of the systemic and human difficulties encountered during implementation and in response to the appeal of all citizens, an extension of 10 days was authorized till 10th February 2023 for the completion of the process. All these activities are being carried out within the ambit of the Constitution, the relevant law under the CBN Act 2007, and in line with global best practices. Fellow citizens, while I seek your understanding and patience during this transient phase of implementation, I feel obliged to avail you a few critical points underpinning the policy decision. These include A, the need to restore the statutory ability of the CBN to keep a firm control over money in circulation. In 2015, when this administration commenced its first term, currency in circulation was only 1.4 trillion naira. B, the proportion of currency outside banks grew from 78% in 2015 to 85% in 2022. As of October 2022, therefore, currency in circulation has risen to 3.23 trillion naira, out of which only 500 billion naira was within the banking system, while 2.7 trillion naira remained permanently outside the system, thereby distorting the financial policy and the efficient management of inflation. C, the huge volume of banknotes outside the banking system has proven to be practically unavailable for economic activities and by implication retard the attainment of potential economic growth. Economic growth projections make it imperative for government to aim at expanding financial inclusion in the country by reducing the number of the unbanked population. And E, given the prevailing security situation across the country, which keeps improving, it also becomes compelling for government to deepen its continuing support for security agencies to successfully combat banditry and ransom taking in Nigeria. Notwithstanding the initial setbacks experience, the evaluation and feedback mechanism set up has revealed that gains have emerged from the policy initiative. I have been reliably informed that since the commencement of this program, about 2.1 trillion naira out of the banknotes previously held outside the banking system had been successfully retrieved. This represents about 80% of such funds. In the short to medium and long terms, therefore, it is expected that there would be a strengthening of our macroeconomic parameters, B, reduction of money supply, leading to a deceleration of the velocity of money in the economy, which should result in less pressures on domestic prices. C, lowering of inflation as a result of the accompanying decline in money supply that will slow the pace of inflation. D, collapse of illegal economic activities, which would help to stem corruption and acquisition of money through illegal ways. E, exchange rate stability. F, availability of easy loans and lowering of interest rates. And G, greater visibility and transparency of our financial actions, translating to efficient enforcement of our anti-money laundering legislations. I am not unaware of the obstacles placed on the path of innocent Nigerians by unscrupulous officials in the banking industry, entrusted with the process of implementation of the new monetary policy. I am deeply pained and sincerely sympathize with you all over these unintended outcomes. To stem this tide, I have directed the CBN to deploy all legitimate resources and legal means to ensure that our citizens are adequately educated on the policy, enjoy easy access to cash withdrawal through availability of appropriate amount of currency and the ability to make deposits. I have similarly directed the CBN should intensify collaboration with anti-corruption agencies so as to ensure that any institution or persons found to have impeded or sabotaged the implementation should be made to bear the full weight of the law. During the extended phase of the deadline for currency swap, I listened to invaluable pieces of advice from well-meaning citizens and institutions across the nation. I similarly consulted widely with representatives of the state governors as well as the Council of State. Above all, as an administration that respects the rule of law, I have also noted that the subject matter is before the courts of our land and some pronouncements have been made. To further ease the supply pressures, particularly to our citizens, I have given approval to the CBN that the old 200 Naira banknotes be released back into circulation and that it should also be allowed to circulate as legal tender with the new 200 Naira, 500 Naira, and 1,000 Naira banknotes for 60 days from February 10th, 2023 to April 10th, 2023, when the old 200 Naira notes ceases to be legal tender. In line with Section 20, subsection 3 of the CBN Act 2007, all existing old 1,000 Naira and 500 Naira notes remain redeemable at CBN and designated points. Considering the health of our economy and the legacy we must bequeath to the next administration and future generations of Nigerians, I admonish every citizen to strive harder to make their deposits by taking advantage of the platforms and windows being provided by the CBN. Let me assure Nigerians that our administration will continue to assess the implementation with a view to ensuring that Nigerians are not unnecessarily burdened. In this regard, the CBN shall ensure that new notes become more available and accessible to our citizens through the banks. I wish to once more appeal for your understanding till we overcome this difficult transient phase within the shortest possible time. Fellow citizens, on the 25th of February 2023, the nation will be electing a new president and National Assembly members. I am aware that this new monetary policy has also contributed immensely to the minimization of the influence of money in politics. This is a positive departure from the past and represents a bold legacy step by this administration towards laying a strong foundation for free and fair elections. I urge every citizen, therefore, to go out to vote for their candidates of choice without fear, because security shall be provided and your vote shall count. I, however, admonish you to eschew violence and avoid actions capable of disrupting the electoral processes. I wish us all a successful general elections. Thank you for listening. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Right, a lot to chat about. You just heard the president's speech there. I mean, your take on this. And
yes, State of the Nation address by the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and part of his opening statement was reminding us that he was speaking as a democratically elected President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And this was quite key. A small statement, but a big interpretation of that in terms of the fact that he wasn't speaking from a partisan perspective. He wasn't speaking as a member of a party. He was speaking now as the father of the nation, as the chief executive officer, if you like, of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He identified, as you saw, with the pains and the untold hardships of people as a result of the scarcity of the new Naira notes. I think this is off the back of the fact that we had quite a number of protests across some states in Nigeria, in Oyo, Delta State, in Edo State. Some banks were burnt. We saw ATMs, some ATMs in banks destroyed. Indeed, some banks had to close us. So this was quite critical for the president to then come and address the people who elected him into office. The summary of this, of course, with regards to the Naira redesign policy, and as to whether the old notes, well, the notes, 500 Naira notes, 1,000 Naira notes, and 200 Naira notes have ceased to be legal tender, was addressed here. So according to what he said, that still is substantive. So from the 10th of February, your 500 Naira and 1,000 Naira notes remain, have ceased to be legal tender. However, he said in light of easing the hardship of Nigerians, 200 Naira notes would stay side by side by the new notes until 10th of April, which is 60 days after the initial 10th of February. So those are that's just laying the fact and making it clear for people who are watching just to interpret that. Now, the importance of this as well is the fact that he's talked about or cited the CBN Act of Section 20 and subsection 3 to stand by the fact that they haven't done anything constitutionally wrong, and he has acted within the ambit, the CBN has acted within the ambit of the power conferred to it by the CBN Act. He then also spoke about saboteurs. He talked about the fact that the CBN should come hard, and those who are sabotaging in terms of the bankers, the full weight of the law. And this has to be emphasized because we've talked about this a number of times on this show. We've talked about the fact that there are people who are sabotaging the circulation of the new Naira notes. The reason why there are long queues, the reason why we haven't seen these notes in the hands of the ordinary Nigerian is because there are some people who are bypassing the process and getting these notes by speaking to some bigwigs in the banks. So this is quite important to note. And I do hope, because now we've seen it clearly that this has come to stay. He highlighted the gains of this policy, that this is time for us to begin to find out who these people are. We asked the same questions yesterday. Who are these people sabotaging? And they must face the full weight of the law, because if this is for the gain of Nigeria, then it has to work. It must work. And that's very important. And then just to also talk about the fact that he talked about the pumping of these new notes in circulation. If this must work as well in the coming days, we want to see more of these notes in circulation. That's the new 500 Naira notes and the new 1,000 Naira notes. In terms of just for us as Nigerians, the president has spoken. This is a policy that has already recorded gains, and particularly for the elections. He had to speak about that because we have only a few more days to go. And the fact that this is also to curb voter buying and inducement by money. Hashtag say no to money politics 2023. If this must work, we must all, as Nigerians, take on active citizenry. First of all, I hope the CBN will provide a portal where Nigerians can report banks that are flouting or not providing these new notes to citizens. I hope Nigerians can report POS agents who are taking advantage of this situation by adding or charging their customers, in excess. I hope that these opportunities will open, because I engaged the POS agent the other day and I said, I'll report you to the CBN because what you're doing is against the law. And so as active citizens, beyond asking the government, we as well must take responsibility if we must make sure that this works. We have a nation to fix, and everyone must put their hands on board.
Dr. Batu?
Well, yes. I mean, good timing. At a time there were reports of riots, banks being attacked in different parts of the country. About 3 or 4 persons were killed in Benin City alone. And before then, there was violence in Abeokuta, reported violence in Ibadan, reported violence across parts of the country as a result of these Naira redesign policies. Secondly, there is a matter before the Supreme Court of Nigeria in which you have on one side 9 plaintiffs, state governments, and you have on the other side 3 defendants, the Attorney General and the 2 other states, Edo and Bayelsa, who have said they should be joined as co-defendants. And so to that extent, there's tension in the country. There is also division at the level of the states, between the states and the federal government, between states on the side of the federal government and on the side of the CBN and the governors. Now, beyond all of that, also, the banking sector has been disrupted. Many banks have shut down. People do not have access to cash. People are expressing their agony. So at this point, the president comes in and he says, in a presidential manner, I identify with the difficulties you are going through. I sympathize with you. But be assured that the Buhari administration is listening to you and will take every legitimate and necessary step to make sure that you do not go through any unnecessary or unwarranted difficulty. After all, the responsibility of government under Section 14 is to ensure the security and welfare of the people. So in terms of general objective, I think that the intervention at this critical moment is very useful. And the empathy from the president is important. And he pegged all of that on his commitment and the commitment of his administration to the Nigerian people to put their interests first. And putting their interests first he repeated all those fundamentals that the CBN governor had always stated about economic growth, steps that needed to be taken to tame inflation, steps that would need to be taken to check illicit financial flows, steps that would need to be taken to stabilize the financial system and to make sure that it's no longer business as usual. The president took ownership of all of that. But what are the direct implications beyond the empathy, the sympathy, the leadership that he has demonstrated? I will raise a number of questions. The first is, we were told yesterday that some governors, specifically Nasir Rufai of Kaduna State, speaking on their behalf, said that they have been approached by the federal government for an out-of-court settlement that will lead to these, plaintiffs, withdrawing their case at the Supreme Court. Yes, they can. That's the process. But the governors put out a statement and said that they do not agree to the proposal by the federal government, which is that the old 200 Naira notes will remain in circulation, not the 500 Naira and 1,000, because according to the CBN, those denominations that have been returned have been destroyed. But that it is still possible to put the 200 Naira notes back into circulation. El-Rufai, speaking for those governors, said that that's a fake proposal and that it is not true. Now, if the objective is for the governors, the complainants to meet the federal government halfway, then what will happen? Would they agree now? Would they reflect further on the leadership that the president has provided and say, well, let's give peace a chance. Let's approach the Supreme Court and withdraw the case? Well, if you read the statement by Nasir Rufai, there are other issues he's raising there about what information is available to them about how much new notes can be printed within the next 1 year to meet the target of 1 trillion naira. But we would like to see what the reaction from that direction will be. Now, what is the implication for the Supreme Court, the matter before the Supreme Court? What the Supreme Court decided on Wednesday was that the matter has been adjourned till February 22. Mustafa SAN approached the court and asked the court to give a new order extending, the ex parte order that he granted. And, the judge said there was no point because that order still exists. Because what the court said on February 8 is that status quo should be maintained until the determination, or until the hearing of the motion on notice and the determination of the matter. Now, that did not happen, when the court met this week, so that has been postponed. So what has this president done? The president acknowledged the issues in court at paragraph 15 and also said he had consulted widely. But some people may interpret it to mean that what the president has done is tactically to undermine the Supreme Court. But we'll see what that is. Because by extending further till April 10, then what will the court do when it hears the motion on notice? Number 3, so much is made of the independence of the Apex Bank by certain commentators. If anyone looked at that speech very carefully, you see that at paragraph 4 and paragraph 5, the president, in fact, took ownership of what the CBN has done. In one paragraph, he said, I authorized. In another paragraph, he said, I approved. Which means that the independence that we talk about is limited because the CBN is an agency of the federal government, and that much was made very clear. In the last 1 week, the CBN governor has met the president 4 times. So, but it is important that this will douse tension. We expect that nobody will go about rioting now that the president has personally intervened. And we hope, because the president stressed the point about the CBN making the banknotes available, even the old 200 Naira notes. And the CBN has been blaming some saboteurs, and the president also referred to that. We hope that the banks would follow this instruction and that the CBN will follow the directive of the president to make sure that the banks do what they need to do. This is not the best time to be a banker. Now that bankers are jumping the fence, now that bankers are closing their shops. I hope they will open those shops today, particularly in places where there has been no report of threats. What the president has done is to douse tension. And it's good that his statement has been widely circulated, and that all the people who are angry will at least allow the president's directive to take effect. But this is not the end of the matter. The matter before the court, when the Supreme Court consolidates the various suits before it, both the complainants and the defendants going before the Supreme Court, we would like to see, what follows after that. But peace is important because we're just a few days to general elections. And what the president has done in the closing paragraphs is to reassure Nigerians that his administration is committed to that election and that Nigerians should go out to vote. Very good statement, but there are questions. Those questions, I don't want to go further in terms of what he calls the gains of the policy so far. Foreign exchange stability. Is foreign exchange stable? Lowering of inflation. Is inflation lower now, as of this morning? Following the report by the Bureau of Statistics yesterday. But we can leave those details.
Okay. President Muhammadu Buhari has spoken well this morning. Kudos to him as a leader. I think in all of this, we've been able to see the games politicians play to suit their own narrative. And I'm sure Nigerians are wiser by these games. Hence, when the president put forward an olive branch, let's meet halfway, they said, no, it's not a good enough deal for them. Because in fact, when you recirculate the 200 Naira notes, it will not still be easy for them to be able to logistically manipulate elections. Because the bulk of the matter is the 500 and the 1,000 Naira notes. So I'm not surprised. In the coming days, we'd also like to call for calm because the protests probably will be heightened because the politicians are not still satisfied. And they'll still look for more ways to mop up. When we talk, let's talk empirically. Let's not talk as though the CBN doesn't know what it does with the back end as regards, correcting money instability in the system and what it prints. So this attempt by politicians to force them to know what they print, I think it's an anathema to the policy itself, because if it's going to control money circulation, it knows the kind of money it will put in circulation should be able to control the system. And that's why it's the central bank. So I've seen the attempts, just like I've seen the attempts by people to attack the CBN in Benin, which the video empirically shows that a bus was dropped in there. So that means some boys were mobilized to go do that until they were repelled. All we just call for is calm. The other part is the part of the Supreme Court. Yes, the Supreme Court has ruled. And that's why we'll see how this pans out in the coming days. It says status quo should be maintained. That's a level of triumphalism for those that went to the Supreme Court. But the president has also spoken on this. And in all of this, the president also reiterated the independence of the CBN in all of this. And let's not pull that apart. But if we are to look critically at the president's speech, what's the meat of the matter? The meat of the matter starts from paragraph 10, where he talked about the gains and also enunciated the fact that in 2015, you had about 1.3 or 1.4 trillion out of bank circulation, monetary-wise. Now it's going to 3.2 trillion, from 78% to 85%. For all those that make the argument, I beg to ask, who are the people that store this money in their homes? Is it not politicians? I mean, if we have so much money in circulation and the poverty rate of Nigeria has reduced tremendously, we'll know maybe people are trading among themselves. But this money is skewed towards a few group of persons. And that's why you don't really see that money changing hands. It's just been stored somewhere over the years. And Nigeria should not act like they didn't see those videos when it was released of monies even getting spoiled in people's homes and never came back to the banking system. There's been some successes, even as regards kidnapping. We all saw the other day where kidnappers were saying, people should only bring the new notes. As regards inflation, for the very first time, before inflation did rise again in the month in this last month of January, for the very first time, we had a 10-month halt to inflation. The last inflation numbers, inflation really did stall. But now again, inflation went up because we know the parameters have pushed it up. These are the empirical arguments there. Has the Naira stabilized? Not yet. Because largely we are seeing political season. And we know how these people are mopping up cash. What triggered the Naira? I keep referring to what happened. The mop-up of cash by decent politicians during the party primaries. Or have we forgotten the story of how fake dollar was being given? Wasn't it after the mop-up of the Naira for the party primaries in last year, 2022, that the Naira to the dollar rate went up? If we want to build a country, it behoves on us to collectively build a country that will stand the test of time. What I see with the president's speech is that people will still try to renege against it. That doesn't suit their narrative. But please, we call for calm. Let us stop using children that know nothing about the games the politicians play to go protest on the street because hitherto the politicians themselves have weaponized poverty. We want a country in trust and a country that truly respects the yearnings and the aspirations of its people. And having a sane electoral process and a sane economy is a way to respect the yearnings and the aspirations of people. Time will tell in the coming days. There will still be more ruckus. You can't put that out. They will still fight back. This game will play on probably till next sitting of the Supreme Court comes. But in everything we do, let's remember we are Nigerians first, and this country is more than any group of politicians. Nigeria will survive. God bless this dear country of ours.